You're the one you've been waiting for. You may have heard about Prince Charming and Cinderella, the perfect person who's going to come and save you or save us. That's what we're taught, right? That's what the romantic movies show. This person comes along and makes you happy and fulfills you into happily ever after. But then the love songs, my achy breaky heart, and all the pain and all the drama, and a lot of videos on YouTube about relationships, how to guard yourself against these damn women and these damn men, and the manosphere is full of it, and the angry feminists, and people are having a hard time in relationship. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're not healed in ourselves and we're looking for someone to complete us. But not only that, that people trigger us, and they trigger parts of ourselves that we don't love. A simple example comes up in the comments you might read on YouTube or comments you might see on social media, where people just start lashing out at someone they don't even know just for having a different viewpoint. Like, we all have unhealed parts of ourselves that get triggered, and they get really triggered in relationships. So this book is by Richard Schwartz. He's the founder of Internal Family Systems, which is a view of working with ourselves to heal ourselves and recognizing that we have different parts of ourselves, that some of them we really like and have really strong, and then other parts that we have so neglected and abandoned that we so hate, but they're still in us and running the show. What do I mean by parts? Parts are just different aspects of our personality, like the part of us that needs distance and the part of us that wants connection. I'm just going to list some things I just wrote down from this book just to give you an example of what I mean with parts. It's like feeling needy, feeling vulnerable, being possessive, feeling weak or worthless or incompetent, being exuberant, sexual, sensual, assertive, independent, or dependent, fearful, rageful, critical, patient, incompetent, vitality, confidence, insecurity, security, strength, weakness, sophisticated, unsophisticated, selfish, crying, nurturing, limit setting, tantruming, demanding, afraid, acting out sexually, partying, flirting, working, not caring about one's appearance, wanting nurturing, wanting to speak up about something that's bothering us, abandonment anxiety. Those are just some things I wrote down, like just different parts of us. And there are parts of us that our society really values, like working hard. But there are parts of us that we could be more ashamed about, or parts of us that were, or behaviors, or parts of us that were devalued by our society or shamed in our households growing up, like being needy. Say, for example, I think that could be a common one, is just being needy. Like, there are times when we're all needy, right? But if we have not made peace with that part and have suppressed it so that we never want to be needy, or we have to really spend a lot of energy repressing it, that neediness is still there, but unexpressed, it will come out in really unhealthy ways. And it can easily get triggered, and we're not aware that it's a needy part. But we have these other parts called protectors. And what these protectors do, they have a bunch of strategies to keep these exiled parts, these parts that we're not even aware of, that we've suppressed, to keep them locked away. And the reason I made that list is because it's like, what are my exiled parts? What are the parts of myself that I have shut away? So I can start to make friends with them. But definitely, how you know that someone has, how you know that you have an exiled part, is when you become emotionally flooded or triggered. Then that person has somehow touched upon an exiled part of you. So instead of lashing out at the person, it's like, oh, it requires some self-awareness. It's like, oh, why am I so flooded right now? What part of myself have I not made friends with? Because in ordinary conversation, like even being on a social media or something, we're not in danger. So like, what is really happening? What is the part of us that we have disowned, that we get so angry that someone shows that? It could also be like a man who doesn't like his own vulnerability. So when his son cries, he becomes angry and punishes the boy for being weak, because the man has exiled his own vulnerability and his own ability to feel. And because he has hated that part in himself, he gets really triggered when he sees it in his son, for as an example. Now, what the problems come up in relationships are from the parts of us that are the protectors. And the protectors are not in a healthy protectors. The protectors usually come out in really unhealthy ways because they're protecting hidden parts. They're not healthy protectors. So here are some of the common manifestations of protective parts. Is like the 4 horsemen that the Gottmans identified is criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Those are all protectors. Intimidation attempts, any attempt including threats of abandonment or violence. Ignoring or refusing to make repair attempts. Feeling emotionally flooded. Feeling numb and an absence of love for your partner. Self-loathing and the urge to twist yourself into a pretzel to please or placate your partner. So during conflict, if you do any of those are your protective parts. So guys, don't hate yourselves. We all do this, okay? So this is just like, oh, I'm not really like, how did I get to be like in a good mood and now my partner says something and I'm super angry and I hate them? It's just nothing wrong with you. It's just your protective part coming out, protecting a part of you that you've exiled. Okay? Now here's a longer list. During daily interactions, these are protective behaviors. These are not connecting, healthy, enlivening, nourishing behaviors. These will come up in your relationship, but if they come up a lot over and over and over, and if they become chronic and dominant, then couples are doomed. So I'm going to read these off. Ignoring, rejecting, or not initiating bids for connection. So during daily interactions, if you ignore, reject, or do not initiate bids for connection with your partner. A chronic absence of sexual desire, affection, interest in being together, or intimate disclosure. A chronic presence of urges such as binging, having an affair, shopping, sleeping, rage, and desire for revenge or leaving your partner. Viewing your partner as unattractive and chronically focusing on your partner's physical flaws. A chronic presence of inner chatter such as self-criticism and fear of upsetting your partner, overly caretaking of your partner, feeling criticized or embarrassed by your partner, a strong and constant negative judgment toward your partner, jealousy and distrust, desire to control your partner, fear of being engulfed or controlled by your partner, ruminating over previous hurts from your partner and anticipating more, a sense of being trapped and powerless unless your partner changes, fear of being abandoned by your partner. So that's a long list, and people will naturally, as we're humans, experience these, but it's just if they become really chronic because these exiled parts are so dormant. And the reason that these things come up is, again, because there are certain parts of ourselves that we have neglected and are repressing and that we hate and that we loathe. And until we can make peace with those parts, they will rule us. And they will run the show in a negative way. That's why people have so much problem in relationships. And, add to this the fact that we're taught by movies and by society that there's this person out there who's going to make us whole and complete, to the point that people have these exiled parts. They're going to really struggle in relationship, because the healthy way of using these parts is like, oh, when my partner upsets me or triggers me, that's a trailhead to look for an exile that I can make peace with and love. And that's possible in a safe relationship. Whether you're monogamous or polyamorous doesn't really matter. In a safe relationship, people can heal their own parts. No one else can heal you. And the exiles are the parts of ourselves that we've rejected. It could be your sexuality, it could be your neediness, it could be your vulnerability, it could be your anxiety, your vitality even. The exiles look either for a redeemer, like this perfect other, the Prince Charming or the perfect woman. They want a redeemer or a safe person who's not going to trigger their exile. So you might get into a relationship with someone where you don't feel much, because that's super safe. Your exiles won't be triggered. And also that we're socialized to not take care of our exiles, and that our partner holds the key to our happiness. So we try to change him or ourselves, or find strategies to disengage from that partner, because we don't not know how to make peace with these exiles. So what people usually do is they either try to change their partner into the person that they want their partner to be. They try to change themselves to get their partner to love them, like placating, not being so needy, fawning, or they give up on getting what they need from their partner, so they check out of the relationship, fantasize about other people, shopping, drinking, binging, having an affair. So those are all coping strategies. And this book is kind of another angle on the self-love journey, where it's really about loving the parts of ourselves that we hate. And the interesting thing is, once you love those parts, they no longer rule you. So people are like, well, I don't want to be needy. The neediness is bad. And yeah, neediness is a turnoff. But once you love your neediness, then you're no longer going to be unhealthily needy, if that makes sense. We have to bring these exiled parts out of the basement. That's what the second part of this book is about. But I'm not quite there yet on the second part. So I want to just go on to the explaining more about the exiles and what the problem is with the exiles. So we've learned to exile the parts of us that carry attachment injuries from childhood, and like the parts of us that felt threatened or that didn't fit in with our family. And we've also believed that our partner is the one who will at long last make our exiles feel good. And that's what people usually experience when they fall in love, which is really a fall. It's a false, temporary blinding, really, of what is. I know it helps people bond. I don't like the falling in love part, because I think it's a blinding, a false blinding, like a drugged blinding. But I could be wrong, maybe I'm just afraid of it. But to me, it seems really false, because the higher people rise in their exuberance, the more they're going to fall, because they fall in love because they only see the perfect parts of their partner, or they think their partner can redeem them. They haven't yet gotten to know the person and developed a relationship. I think love is something that exists when you are in a full relationship with someone that you really know and can trust. This falling in love thing to me doesn't seem very real. That's just my opinion. But if you believe that your partner will at long make your exiles feel good, well, that's a false trap anyway. Well, that's what he says too. The above is set up for many reasons. First, not only can't our partner permanently unload the worthlessness and pain of our exiled parts, But at some point, they're also likely to hurt us, causing an attachment injury. I've talked about this many times. Our partner will disappoint us. They won't meet our needs. And we have to be able to be okay with that, because even every human interaction, even mother and child, has connection and distancing. Like babies will want to interact with mom, and then they want to be left alone to go back in themselves. There's that constant thing, right? And some moms have a really hard time when baby turns away or the little child turns away. You know, I remember when my kids were in kindergarten, they'd be like, oh, mom, well, after school, we want to go play with our friends. They start preferring their friends over me, you know, and I'm like, ooh, that doesn't feel good, but I have to let them go and find joy in them letting go and having their own friends. The same as in relationship. Your partner will at times draw close and then want their own time alone. So will you. And when they pull away and you treat that as a rejection, and you reject them outright and criticize them or go after them or whatever, that's unhealthy. And then it will start to erode the relationship. Like, we have to be able to be okay with our own need for connection and our own need for independence, so that we don't get triggered by when our partner does these things. But a lot of people are not able to do that. So they get hurt every time their partner says no to them or doesn't want to connect with them when they do. And so a lot of relationships are already doomed, because people take these little things that are normal parts of human interaction as like this huge injury, I think. Okay, so this idea that someone else is going to love us at long last is a setup. First of all, because our partners cannot unload our own inner worthiness and our disowned parts. They're not able to do that. And they're also likely to hurt us, you know. Second, our culture is full of beliefs and forces that increase our dependence on our partner. And third, we often select our partner for the wrong reasons and from the wrong parts. So as long as we have unhealed parts, we're going to select a partner based on these unhealed parts. Someone who won't trigger them, or someone who is going to re-trigger them in a way that we can't handle. So unless we've done this work, this is why so many people struggle with relationships, because they have these unmet needs in themselves and these hated parts of themselves. So they're walking around not even as whole people, including myself. Inevitably, our partner hurts or exiles, which triggers our protectors. So when our partner hurts us, it triggers our protectors, and our protectors have three different projects. Like I mentioned before, they either want to change our partner, we want to change ourselves to learn to deal with our partner, which means changing ourselves in a negative way, usually, like minimizing or creating more exiles, I think, or we give up. Because of these projects, we and our partners end up with what he calls neo-exiles. Neo-exiles are exiles you create when you get into a relationship. So say that you're a person who loves your freedom and going where you want, but now that you're in a relationship, you're going to exile your independence because you don't want your partner to get triggered when you want to go out. You don't want to upset them. They want to kind of own you a little bit more. So you exile your independence and your freedom and your liveliness. Maybe you exile your sexuality. Have you ever done that? Like, oh, I'm in a relationship now, so I can't be as sexual. And you start to exile parts of yourself so that you're no longer the person your partner was attracted to, and you start hating yourself and losing all vitality in the relationship. Those are all neo-exiles, the parts of ourselves, and I've done this too, the parts of myself that I abandoned to be in this relationship, and those are going to deaden me. Those are the neo-exiles. So these neo-exiles resent being shut out of the relationship, so they try to sabotage it. So what he's saying in this book, it's possible to become the primary caretaker of our own exiles so that our partner is freed up to be their secondary caretaker. Everything improves once this has been achieved. But in order to do this, both partners have to do a U-turn in their focus from outside themselves to inside. That's the thing. To move from viewing themselves as having a unitary personality to the multiplicity perspective. So the multiplicity perspective is kind of the parts perspective. So like when you get mad, instead of saying, I'm so mad, I'm a mad thing, or your partner gets mad, it's like, he's mad, he's a mad thing. It's like, no, there's a part of him that's mad. There's a part of me that's mad. And that's really helpful because then we don't have to see ourselves as a mad thing. And we can take a little bit of distance and get curious about it. And we don't have to hate our partners being like, he's this mad thing. It's like, oh, well, there's a part of him that's mad. Or for women who get upset when their partner is vulnerable or cries, it's like, oh, I needed my guy to be strong, and now he's crying and he's weak, and now I hate him. You know, you've heard that a lot on the internet. It's because people need to see that multiplicity. Well, there's a part of him that's sad. There's a part of him that's vulnerable. I can make space for that part. I don't have to, it's not all of him that's that way. It's a part of him. And also for us to not have to see this man as being our savior and our protector, that he's allowed to have his own needs and feelings and parts. So it's a healthy way of like, it's a multiplicity perspective. Then you can use the inevitable triggers that arise in your relationship as trailheads to follow inside and help the protectors and exiles you find there instead of taking up the 3 projects. And that's where, was it Pema Chon, or what was her name again, the Buddhist? She said, I love when people trigger me, and I could never get it. But if in a safe relationship being triggered and it's like, oh, I'm triggered, okay, let me look at why, and having a safe space to work that out, that does seem very interesting to me. So that trailhead tracking process allows each of you to learn about what is happening inside when you're triggered. And then the next step, coming back to your partner and speaking for your parts rather than from your parts. So when you can take that little distance and be like, oh, there's a part of me that's needy. There's a part of me that's feeling really scared. There's a part of me that's angry, and speaking for that part instead of from that part has 2 effects, because since your partner isn't being directly attacked by your protectors, they can hear about your reactions from a place of respect and compassion, and they get a more complete picture of their impact. And then you can also, that also gives information about your vulnerable exiles. And then you can negotiate changes. So, I mean, this is just like a practice in relationship. And I'm going to make a separate video because this one's already so long. Should I make a separate video? It kind of started in a later chapter. Well, I'll just go on. I'm going to make a separate video that talks about what the parts are. Wait. No, I don't think that's good. I think this video will be about the parts and the impact of the parts on the relationship. And then I'll make a separate video about how to heal those parts. Whether people listen to or not, I'm making this video for myself. When I explain stuff, it kind of helps me to solidify it a little bit. When I was younger in school, I used to like play teacher, and I would like get up on, have this whiteboard and get up and explain to the class, you know, as a fun way of like repeating what I had learned so I could help remember it better. I love this little bra by sports bra by Fabletics. Okay, let's continue. So for reasons that are going to be discussed in this book, your partner cannot succeed in making you feel good in a lasting way. That's why the Cinderella movies and the romantic comedies, I hate them. They're all lies. They're all bullshit. They're false flags. They're fake. There's nothing authentic about them. So If you've had a hard life filled with rejection and loneliness, their love can only temporarily lift the cloud of worthlessness and self-loathing that will return whenever they are away or in another mood. If you enter the relationship expecting them to be that kind of redeemer, inevitably you will be disappointed at some point. Our Western culture and many of the relationship experts in it have issued us faulty maps and improper tools. As most of these relationship experts, all the movies, all the love songs, all the poetry, they're faulty. In my opinion, I agree with him. We've been told that the love we need is a buried treasure hidden in the heart of a special, intimate partner. I've been guilty of this. Part of me still feels that way, maybe. Once we find that partner, the love we crave should be flowing, elixir-like, filling our empty spaces and healing our pain. And actually, sure enough, it does. When you first meet someone, and I have not been in that in-love place in a really long time, and I never want to be in that in-love place again, because that's all fake. That's not real. That's what people feel like. That's why people are in love, because finally they have someone who fills their empty spaces, fills their pain, and fills their heart with love. And my question always was, I want to be that in love with myself. I see these people walking around in love. I'm like, what? How can I access that without needing a partner? That's where I want to be before I ever date someone. How can I feel that way? Because that kind of high that comes from a partner, that's fake. It's gonna go away. When that love stops flowing, even momentarily, which it will, we get scared and go to work on one of 3 projects, which I talked about earlier in the video. The first of these are designed to get our partner back into that loving redeemer role. That's like trying to force our partner to change back or to change into, or for us to change ourselves so that they will love us. And the third project is to give up on that endeavor and find alternatives. These are all called exiling projects. Let's go into these exiling projects in detail to see, what you can realize about yourself when your partner has disappointed you. Okay, when the first exiling project is you try to get them to change back. Okay, it's our disappointment. Okay, but because we have all these unhealed parts, we go about doing a project. We try to change our partner. Okay, it's a project. It's not healthy, it's a project. So this is how we try to change our partner. We plead, criticize, demand, negotiate, seduce, withhold, and shame, all in an effort to get them to change. But that never works because people don't want to be changed. They get defensive. That doesn't work. The second project is to use these tools on ourselves. We try to figure out what our partner doesn't like about us, and then we try to sculpt ourselves into what we think they want, even if that's a far cry from our true nature. We use self-criticism and shame to cut off parts of our personality or pounds off our bodies, hoping that if we please them, they will love us. Because this isn't authentic, it backfires. And then the final project that we go to when our partner's love stops flowing, the final project kicks in once we give up on getting the love we crave from our partner. At that point, we begin to close our heart to them, and we do either search for a different partner, or numb and distract from the pain and emptiness enough to stay with the original one by shopping, drinking, drugging, overworking, or numb and distract enough to live alone. All of these are exiling projects. In the first, we try to get our partner to exile the parts of them that threaten us. Trying to get them to change is I'm exiling the parts of you that threaten me. In the second, where I'm trying to change myself, I work to exile the parts of me that I think they don't like. In the third, we exile the parts of us that are attached to them. I don't want to be attached to you, so I'm going to start thinking about other people or distract myself. Whenever a relationship creates exiles, it will pay a price. Okay, so that is kind of the overview of what all this parts work is about. Now, what is this parts? Within, when people listen deeply inside to themselves, they find that they have like a host of different feelings, fantasies, thoughts, impulses, and sensations, a complex family of subpersonalities called parts. And this is not about being like having multiple personalities. It's just a way of realizing that we are complex creatures, like a puzzle. We have different parts. We're not just like one homogeneous blob. Like we have a bunch of different colors and different parts. You can think of these parts as kind of like often quarreling subpersonalities. Like part of me wants to stay married and faithful, but another part wants to be free to get laid every night with a different woman. Or I know I'm successful at my job, but there's a part of me that says soon people will realize I'm really stupid and incompetent. Or the critical voice is a part that's called a protector. Okay, that's another part, the protector. And then there's the inner vulnerable inner childlike part is a type of part called an exile. That's the part that people don't like in themselves, that they exile. So you can become your own healer. You can become the person that your vulnerable parts have been waiting for. And when you become your own healer, then you no longer look to your partner to be your redeemer, and you no longer have to engage in one of the three projects, and then true intimacy will be possible. In the past, that meant logging countless hours in the therapist's office, but fortunately those days are over, because with this parts work, it's very easy to discover the source of your pain and shame. And when those parts come to trust you and welcome you as their healer, then they can love being with your partner. So he says that as clients learn to separate from their extreme emotions and thoughts and their, or their parts actually in this way, they can spontaneously tap into a calm, centered state which he calls their self. They start relaxing into and accepting themselves, and they become really calm. And that's kind of like he calls it a self-to-self interaction. He also found that when people were speaking from their parts, they were able to separate from their very strong emotions rather than being flooded by them. They could, instead of being flooded, they could realize those emotions, speak for them, and heal them and accept them. Now this next chapter is about culture constraints to intimacy, that we've been taught that, Margaret Mead said, the American marriage is one of the most difficult marriage forms that the human race has ever attempted. Couples were once surrounded by communities of relatives and friends, by people who shared their values and helped them out. Today, as you know, couples are frequently isolated mobile units that have to survive on their own. We've lost our sense of community. The cost of living is going up, and wages have not. Our economy is in decline. So couples are really struggling with a loss of social network, while they're more and more having to rely on each other. And virtually every study of marital satisfaction has shown that it drops precipitously with the birth of the first child and doesn't recover until the last one leaves. And partners are cut off from their selves, and this is a problem that, a lot of guys are complaining about women who want a guy who makes a six-figure income. I think these women are very cut off from themselves by being raised in a society so concerned with external appearances that authentic inner desires are ignored and feared. There's also cultural pressure for the romantic rescue that, in our society, we leave our parents and our children leave us, but our partner is supposed to be with us forever. And we're in a very highly mobile, appearance-obsessed, work and consumption addicted culture. And so our isolated couples do need to find a high degree of satisfaction with each other. But it's hard for them because they haven't healed their own parts. Many expectations of intimate relationships are not unrealistic, but your partner has to be freed from the extreme pressure to caretake your parts and deal with your rage and pouting when they're not met. Once you heal your own exiles, you can drop the drawbridge of your castle and allow your partner to get in. So, all right, now we're going to talk about how these exiles develop. Everyone is born with vulnerable parts. Most of us, however, learn through early interactions with our caretakers or through traumatic experiences, or even interactions with other kids or the teachers, in school, that being vulnerable is not safe. Okay, so we lock away those childlike parts inside and make them the inner exiles of our personalities. Okay, the parts of us that we have locked away. Now, if you've had parents who were very loving, patient, tender, and nurturing, you're not going to have as many exiles. So that's why I always say, be careful dating someone who had a traumatic childhood or borderline personality disorder or anything like that, because those people have a lot of exiles. Those people are hard to be in a relationship with. But if you had a parent who loved you, who accepted and embraced your sensitive parts, then you will learn to relate to those parts with acceptance and love. So, but if your parents reacted with criticism and impatience when you acted, hurt or were whiny or clingy, if they reacted that way, then you would have criticized yourself and banished your hurt to the inner basement, the exiled part, the inner basement. And you could wound up as an adult cut off from wonder, from playfulness, from aliveness, vitality, and be dominated by critical and impatient parts. I've even met adults who only speak in a whisper because as children they were shamed for talking, or they were told their voice was bad, or no one wanted to hear what they had to say. So they exile their voice. They don't even want to speak. Or when they speak very softly. Or people who don't want to ask for what they want because when they did, anytime they expressed a need, they were punished, so they have no needs, for example. So if as an adult you wind up cut off from your wonder and playfulness or dominated by critical and impatient parts, those are called managers. Let's see, I have to learn more what managers are. Managers manage you. I wonder if they're like a kind of protector. But manager-dominated people don't experience much connectedness. So if you're a person who is a manager of your parts, then the person you're in relationship with is going to feel objectified and it's not going to feel close, and they're going to start to complain. And I think that's a lot of reason why women file for most of the divorces, because men in our culture are socialized to exile their vulnerability and their emotions, and women are not going to feel fulfilled with men who are disconnected from their emotions, who manage those parts, who objectify the women as just being like domestic servants or available for sex, or they're not interested in the woman's feelings and emotions. The woman will feel very dissatisfied. And if the man cannot access those parts of himself to connect with her, I think that's why women file for most of the divorces. That's why I think younger men have an advantage. I think that people now are boys are more encouraged to feel their emotions, and that's a good thing. I think that when I hear men in the manosphere talk about, my wife divorced me and took all my money and won't let me see my kids, I think instead of saying I'm going to avoid women, which is also a protector strategy, it's to be like, well, what were my parts that attracted me to a woman who treated me that way? Because believe me, those women who do that, there are warning signs from the very first or second date that this woman was selfish and lacked empathy and caring and nurturing. Like, that woman had to see you as an object. And you may not even have known it, because maybe your mom treated you that way, or your mom treat your dad that way. So those manosphere guys really need to look at their part in choosing those women. Because sure, there are women that try to get all your money in divorce, but there are also men that domestically violate and kill the women when they leave them. It's not an exclusive thing that women will hurt you more than men will hurt you. Wounded people will hurt you, and wounded people are attracted to wounded people. So the only real solution is to make peace with the exiled parts. And then when people have exiled parts, they don't feel happy. They feel cut off from their own aliveness. If you ask them how they're feeling, they're just going to say fine. They don't really know how they're feeling. Now, that there are 3 ways that parts are exiled, okay? Intimacy problems are driven by background ache, sense of emptiness, or pull of shame. When as children our parts were upset and became extreme, like selfish, shy, agitated, tantruming, demanding, hitting, fearful, and so on, we triggered parts of our parents that had no patience for those parts in themselves. So our parents reacted to us with criticism, rage, withdrawal of affection, or harsh punishments, and that made us fear, loathe, and exile those parts of ourselves. So consequently, when you were hurt, needy, pouty, demanding, tantruming, or crying, it would trigger your caregiver to react in an extreme way rather than with the warm nurturance or calm limit setting that your parts needed. Perhaps your father disdained his own vulnerability as effeminate and consequently shamed you for yours. Or your mother so needed you to care for her that she gave you the message that you couldn't have needs of your own. Also, many families have unspoken rules against certain kinds of expression, such as a child's simple natural exuberance, sexuality, or assertiveness, and it's labeled as selfish, disgusting, and sinful. To survive in such a family, you adopted your family's attitude towards those parts of you and exiled them too. So many of us learn to disdain, stifle, and try to eliminate not only our neediness and vulnerability, but also our liveliness. We locked away our vitality, our passion, our sensuality, and our courage because those qualities threatened someone we depended on. And he says he worked with many clients who were told by the family that they were too much, and who had playfulness and daring shamed out of them. And sexuality too. A lot of people have sexuality shamed out of them. So, this book goes into more detail. You can bury your joy. Um, all of this, is stuff, fortunately, that we can heal. Now, you might say, what is the problem with these exiles? They're way down, they're repressed. We already talked about how they can keep you from feeling joy and how they can be causes of your triggers and lead you to behave in ways where you're like, well, I don't know why I'm behaving this way, because we have disowned these parts of ourselves that are still in us. The parts we exile exert far more control over us than an imprisoned child could over the people who locked them up. We can become them, suddenly swallowed up by their pain and shame in terrifying ways. They can come up powerfully and trigger surprise and revulsion in our partners. So they do run the shows. When exiles are not triggered and instead exist in us as a constant background ache, they still powerfully, although unconsciously, influence many aspects of our lives, including our choice of intimate partner, our inability to be patient during the search for that partner, and the degree to which we cling to, try to control, protect ourselves from, are hurt by, and are dissatisfied with our partner. In other words, our exiles and their protectors determine everything about our success and failure with intimacy. One goal of this book is to convince you that while your exiles are destructive to your relationships, they're only that way because they have been exiled and carry burdens from your past. Once you learn to love and care for them yourself, they will become the very qualities that make your relationship sparkle. That's why I don't like the manosphere stuff, like that Richard Cooper. He's like, don't date married moms, spin plates, And again, like, he has to look at why he chose those partners. What parts of himself did he exile that made him choose someone who would hurt him? I got divorced. My ex-husband didn't hurt me in the divorce. I didn't take his money or take his kids or any of that stuff. I don't know anyone who got money in the divorce. So it's a choice. I don't know anyone who cheated in their marriage except my dad. Like, why did you pick that person? It's not a universal truth. Men cheat too. Women cheat too. Like, why did you pick someone who cheated? Why did you pick someone who didn't like sex? I picked someone who was walled off sexually and emotionally. Okay? I know why I picked that. But there are other things I don't know that I want to take a look at. That's why I'm really intrigued in this. Like, I have to take responsibility for the person that I picked and the experience that I had, the boundaries I didn't set, the things I overlooked, the parts in myself that I didn't speak up for, that I have disowned. I have to take responsibility for every relationship that I'm in. So finding and healing exiles, what love is, he says that many of his clients never or rarely experience love from their parents. Instead, because of their parents' parts, the clients were objectified in some way as children. What if you were objectified as a child? Like, I had very loving parents. Like, my childhood was all play, but my parents were very busy, so I couldn't go to them for comfort. I'm aware of that. But I did not have to be I did not have to caretake my parents. I didn't even have to do any chores as a kid. Like, in Germany, our life was just all about, like, play. Children are supposed to play. But here, well, for example, if your father needed you to take care of him emotionally, he only valued the parts of you that could do that. Your caretaking parts, your achieving parts, your sexual parts. And you had to exile your own vulnerability. So to those exiles, love means taking on the overwhelming responsibility of trying futilely to take care of someone. If you think relationships are taking care of someone, it could be because your own vulnerability was exiled as a child. So you see relationships as, I gotta take care of someone. And then the relationships could feel very trapping, or you could feel like you're the caretaker. That's the role you take on. If you were objectified in a sexual way by a parent, you will have exiles that believe love means danger and humiliation. If your mother couldn't stand for you to leave her, love means sacrificing all your hopes and ambitions for another person. So your exiles are in a bind. They crave being loved, but they're convinced that love involves a great price. I have worked with many clients, he writes, who, when they finally got close to a childlike exile, found that it was terrified or shut down. Most exiles also believe they're worthless or unlovable. If your exile believes that, it's somehow got that message from your parents. Children are born with a strong need for approval. They need approval, okay? Because children are very needy. So children have an overriding desire to be valued and intense terror when they aren't. And so when children, self-esteem is really a sense of security that one was valued as a child and is likely to survive. But children get the message they're unlovable in 3 different ways. The first 2 happen when parents objectify their kids, okay? They view the child as something other than they are, like the child has to be in a certain role, like you have to be a surrogate spouse or a confidant or a lover to your parent or a trophy to enhance your parents' ego, a source of entertainment or distraction, a savior of your parents' tenuous marriages, or an ally against their enemy spouse. Children get the message that they're only valuable in a role. They're in a confusing bind. So they feel very worthless. They get attention for fulfilling that role, but they feel very worthless. So that's one way of objectifying their kids. The second way that parents objectify their kids is they objectify them as unwanted burdens that have ruined their lives. The kids become scapegoats for their own failings, targets of their displaced rage, or sex toys to be used and discarded. And then these kids start thinking there's something wrong with them. So those are 2 ways that parents objectify their kids, right? The first is the kid has a role. The second is the kid is an unwanted burden. And the third way is by accident. It's like children come up with meanings, like if their parents get divorced, maybe kids blame themselves, and then they start to think that they're unlovable. So people, of course, then we have kids who are abused. And it's great. One of the great injustices in this world is that so often people who are abused as children are doomed to lives of recurrent mistreatment by the beliefs and emotions they accumulate during the initial abuse. That's definitely true. When children are bullied in school, or if they're abused by often victimized. Often these people were already victimized earlier, so they become easy prey for other people who are like predators. Anyway, this book goes more into attachment injuries, I'm just going to finish with this. I'm getting close to the end of this video here. So let's review why lasting intimacy is so difficult and elusive. Many of us have learned from our families and culture to exile our most sensitive and intimacy-seeking parts into the basements of our psyches. And therefore, these parts are love-starved. In addition, from our original attachment injuries, those exiles carry extreme beliefs about the kind of person who can save them, what love is, and what they deserve in relationships. Because we don't know how to deal with our exiles, the intimacy-seeking parts in the basement of our psyches, we enter intimate relationships hoping to get from our partner the love these exiles crave. These basement-dwelling parts, while they're repressed, they are driving the show. It's what Jung calls, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life, and we call it fate. These basement dwelling parts can make us pick the wrong person. I'm talking to Richard Cooper now, who says all women are cheaters and take your money, so you got to spin plates. He picked the wrong person. He picked the wrong women. MGTOW guys, same thing. Women who keep getting abusive men. You picked the wrong person. The answer lies in you. That's the good news. The answer lies in you, not in building a huge wall around yourself and using people as objects to protect yourself. The answer lies in you. Our basement dwelling parts can make us pick the wrong person, make us become addicted to and stay with that person too long, and keep us from being attracted to or remaining with the right person. Because our exiles are so desperate, easily hurt, and terrifying to us, and remember, we're not aware of them, they're repressed. They're repressed. We have other parts that protect them by using one of the three projects: changing our partner, changing ourselves to please our partner, fawning, how can I get you to love me? Or giving up on our partner and distracting and numbing. When our exiles are focused on our partner, the partner will feel overburdened by our clinging, jealousy, and neediness. When our protectors jump in, they will feel shut out and blamed. When our partner acts like one of our parts that we have exiled, we will relate to them in the same way we relate to that part. If we judge ourselves as ridiculously weak when we feel sad or needy, when our partner's vulnerability triggers our own, we'll overtly or covertly judge our partner as weak. If we learn to view our assertive parts as selfish, we'll be uncomfortable with our partner's assertiveness. Now, what is the solution? We have a source of love within us called the self. From this place, we can retrieve these exiles from the basement and heal their wounds sufficiently so that these parts trust us to take care of them. When this happens, our protectors relax and cease to give our partner such a hard time. We become our own part's primary caretaker. Because our former exiles are no longer locked away and now trust us, they're not so desperate, oversensitive, or in need of protection. They let us choose the right person and open our heart to that person without the neediness, trepidation, or protectiveness that characterized our former attempts at intimacy. I am so fucking excited about this. I cannot wait to dig further into this book. Are you as excited as I am about this? It sounds like so fucking awesome. When our former exiles trust ourselves to be their primary caretaker, our partner can be our part's secondary caretaker and can help them feel accepted and loved by an outside person in a way they never have before. In that context, our parts can learn that intimacy can be safe and rewarding and that they deserve to be loved unconditionally. When we love our parts and they trust our leadership, they don't have to distort our perception of our partner to take over or attack them. They can lavish our partner with affection because they have plenty to spare. All the issues that most couples struggle with, expressing affection, respectful communication, sensitivity to the other's needs, these are not strategies you have to learn in therapy. These are all flow naturally from a well-fed, self-led inner self system. So again, all that therapy, that's about how to communicate and how to listen, how to repeat and how to say I statements and all these like strategies that are really mental. He's saying that all of this, you just naturally will flow better when you have when you as yourself have accepted and loved these unhealed parts, that our partner can be a valuable tormentor, mentor, a person who mentors us by tormenting us, because it's very difficult to find all of our basement children and exile basement parts when we're not in an intimate relationship, because often we only become aware of them when they're triggered by an intimate partner. Inevitably, our partner will act like an early caretaker who hurt us, and we will have an extreme reaction, an attachment re-injury. If we follow the trail of emotions to its inner source, we will find yet another exile in need of our love. So I'm very excited to do this work because I'm like, I want to keep growing as a person, even though I'm single and not in a relationship. And I don't like the loss of power I feel when I get triggered. And I can't, sometimes I'm like, I'm really triggered and I don't know why. I don't know what to do about it. So I'm really excited to read the second part of this book and learn like how to do that. And I will share that with you guys. And thank you so much for watching my video. And just so you know, the camera has things backwards. I don't want to save this all in reverse. So just so you know, this book is called You Are the One by Richard Schwartz, PhD, the best-selling author of No Bad Parts.